It is the third party's time now, so would you like to share your time with the minister?
Yes, I would, if that's okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Minister, for being here, and your staff. I know firsthand you got lots of capable people behind you doing good work for Alberta and Albertans.
Agreed.
And continued success with that. Unfortunately, after an hour of questions from some of mine overlap a bit, but they're not quite the answers or the direction I wanted. So some of them will be partly repeats, but it's
take another run at it.
And I'm going to start, Minister, with a quote from last year in estimates, where you said you do a needs assessment, you do a business case, a functional plan, the design, and so on, and you do that before you announce full funding for the project. Then it's included in the capital plan, and that's important. That was your quote. And you've said that several times, Minister, in the past, and I get it. So I'm just a little confused on some of the stuff on our capital plan, like this new Edmonton hospital come out of the blue. Do you have your needs assessment, capital, functional plan, your design? Is that all done?
For that, right? Yeah. Then the overall need was identified by AHS for an additional major facility in the city. As a result of growth, I think the last hospital was built in the 80s, wasn't it? In about 1986 or something. The Grey Nuns. Is that about right, Bob? That was clearly identified as a need on a general basis. But in order to do all of that work, that's part of the capital plan, and that's what the money that you're seeing there is allocated to do. We will take those steps, but it has to be included in the budget in order to do that stuff. So that will all proceed exactly as I laid out. But if I said there was absolutely nothing in the capital budget to do that work, then I may have misspoken, because obviously it has to be in the capital budget so that we can pay for it.
Exactly. So that's a little different. You said you'd have that all done before it was on the capital plan. Here it's on the capital plan. I don't even think you have a site picked yet. So, and I'm sure you don't have the design done.
No.
And so that's not quite in line, and I get it. And believe me, I support a new hospital in Edmonton. It's well needed. You're right. I agree with that. And some of the statements you made and been made in the House that nothing's been built in Edmonton. I don't know if you don't call it a hospital, but the Edmonton K, I think it was $800,000 or $900,000, the Edmonton K clinic, and that's only been open for a few years. So you keep saying going back to 1980. The Edmonton K Clinic's a pretty nice facility that isn't that old, but still, I agree, we need a new facility in Edmonton. But to say that you won't announce anything or put it on the plan until the design and
No, I may have assumed that was a given, but obviously, obviously that work has to be done, and it has to be included in the budget. So.
So projects can be put on
the
capital plan without having all that work done, is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, you don't put your numbers in the capital plan for how much it's going to cost until you know what it is you're going to build.
But you have some substantial numbers in, for the Edmonton Hospital and the Calgary Cancer. So same thing. I'm just, and just because I know we've been criticizing, you keep saying things, and I'm not sure how this really differs from the Grande Prairie project, where you keep, at least in Grande Prairie, they had the land, they knew it was the cancer corridor, it was part of it, and they didn't have the design done, but you don't have it here either.
But what happened in Grande Prairie was a political announcement was made, including some budget numbers. And then they were designing to the political announcement, which didn't take into account what the actual needs are. Whereas we're going to actually do the needs assessment. I mean, one of the reasons, and one of the things that came up earlier in in honorable member from Wainwright's questions is that we don't have the major construction money in the budget. Well, that's, you know, partly because it's down the road a few years, but it's also due to the fact that we don't know what it is until the functional plan, the business plan, all of those things are done. And when that's done, we'll be able to scope the project, we'll be able to get good estimates of what we're expecting, and then it will be properly budgeted in the capital plan. So essentially what you're seeing now is money to do that work, as well as basically a placeholder. But to be clear, we're not intending to scope a project without doing all of those things first.
So like the Calgary Cancer Center, I don't know what the total is, because in the 4-year plan, there's 1.19 billion. And I doubt if that's the total, but that's the end of 4 year. Do you have the total? Yeah.
Rough total.
Hasn't been tendered yet. It's prices back. We expect the tenders to come in at the end of the month from two. It's a little better idea in terms of the final cost.
But do we have a ballpark?
About 1.2 billion.
Okay. So we're waiting for the tenders to come in, and we'll have a much better handle on those costs. But we think it's in the range of $1.2 billion.
1.2
total cost.
So you have the design done.
Yeah, so yeah, that's currently underway.
Well, I thought the tender included the design. It was design built.
It's a design build, so.
It's a design, build.
So the design isn't done because you haven't awarded the tender.
The two proponents are working on it, and we expect to have.
Well, they're working on their design proposals, but you're correct. It's going to be part of the tender.
So in this project, you can announce 1.2 billion without having a design. But these
Well, I
other
didn't
ones,
want to. I was trying to get you a ballpark number, honorable
like they
member.
did in Grande,
It wasn't
get
an
to a
announcement.
ballpark
It wasn't an
number without a
announcement. I was
design.
trying to get you a ballpark answer. The question is, you know, do you design it based on carefully assessing the needs and then projecting it forward, or do you just design it because the Premier says it's going to be this much money? Right?
No, I agree with you. It shouldn't be designed to a budget. It should be designed to the needs, but when you don't know the needs, but you've done a ballpark number, which is kind of what they did in Grand Prairie.
Yeah,
did a
but please
ballpark
don't take
number.
that as a given. Maybe I shouldn't have tossed it out, but I was trying to get you a ballpark number because you asked the question, and you know, it's sort of gonna. We think it'll be in that range, but we'll see what the tenders are going to be, and hopefully they're considerably lower than that.
So will you build to that number, or will you build to the needs?
No.
So just like
We're
they
waiting
did
for
in
the,
Grand
as I
Prairie.
said, we're waiting for the tenders. We're
Yep.
waiting for the tenders, and when the tenders are in, we will have an actual number.
Yeah.
And I probably should have just told you that I can't give you a number.
Yeah.
We're gonna wait for the
I just-
tenders. That
I
would have
s-
been a smarter thing to do, I think.
I just don't see the difference in the two when we built to a ballpark number, and sometimes you hit it out of the park,
We're not
Minister,
gonna
and
hit-
it's a bigger number.
We're not gonna build to the ballpark number.
So anyway, I just really don't see a lot of difference in the way, and you know, and it just leads into the 26 new school projects as well. I mean, good, it's all good stuff. I support it. And I'm quite sure you don't have the design and you know, all the functional plans for those projects as well either. But you've announced them pretty similar to the way we used to do it. I don't see what the difference is in the way you announce those 26. And I'm not saying it's wrong. It's all good. That's how we do things. I just don't see the difference. Can you explain the difference in how it used to be done to the way you did it this time?
Well, and schools are a little different than hospitals, as you're aware. I'll remember there are a number of standardized designs. They're much smaller projects. An elementary school can be built in a couple of years, a high school in 4. But designing a major hospital is just a order of magnitude more complex and needs to be approached differently. So, you know, I'm not so worried about how the previous government did with the schools. as I am how they did on certain specific projects, particularly major healthcare projects.
So, I mean, they're all good projects and I support it, and I just, you've been busy the last few weeks going around the province announcing these schools, and good for you,
Yep.
at each specific place, just like we used to do, I guess, and used to criticize us for doing that. And it's all good, Minister, I just don't see a big difference in the way we used to do it. That's all. If you could point out the difference, fine, otherwise, no comments.
I've done my best,
Yeah,
Honourable
okay.
Member.
I'll move on. And so, speaking of these school projects, just wondering if some things have changed or not. So do you still, or do you now support, giving some of the larger school boards authority to build their own projects?
Well, they do now.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, they do now.
So you're still supporting that?
Yeah, no.
But not all of them.
There's not, well, it depends on their capacity,
Yeah. If they
and
want.
the bigger school boards have capacity to do that. Smaller ones are, generally quite happy to have us do it for them.
So as long as they want to do them, you're still happy to let them?
As far as I'm aware, that's how we're gonna.
And
continue to
Minister,
proceed.
in the past, there was some good work done with partnerships, whether it's municipalities or developers, building school projects with recreational projects or community projects like libraries or community facilities, and I think it makes good use of public infrastructure, and they get used. And so, do you still support that?
Yes, I think that's a very good idea to
there's some-
try and incorporate them. Schools are often, a hub in the community, right? They tend to be a center of many communities. It might be a neighborhood within a big city, or it might just be a small town, but they tend to be to co-locate them with municipal projects, pools or libraries, as you say, or projects like that, makes a great deal of sense. And I think that where we can do that, we'll continue to.
And there's some really great examples of that in the province of
Yep.
some big projects that are working well. So I was just curious if any of these 26 new announced school projects, or any of them have some of these partnerships.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't hear the last part.
So are any of the new school projects co-located with other community facilities like a library? So that's going to be considered in the planning phase that we're entering into now, which will take about a year. And so if there are any, they will be identified in that process.
Okay, usually they know ahead of time if they're, if they're
Well, they're-
shovel-ready or planned. The school boards always
I
have
think the
their
school
number
boards
one
may know
project.
that information. I do not, and if you'd like, we can try and get it for you.
Okay, no, just, I hope that continues, and I'd like to see some of the new ones do that as well. Another one I wasn't necessarily going to bring up, but it's a little bit of a pet project I've been working on, Minister, and if I'd have known this when I was there, I would have done something about it, but it's come up in the last year and a half, and I worked through your department to resolve it, and I'm getting a little frustrated and didn't
Okay.
get the answers I was promised, so I thought I'd bring it up here today.
All right.
So in procurement of roofing projects in Alberta through the government infrastructure, one of the requirements to bid on a roofing project in infrastructure is to be a member of the Alberta Roofers Association, I think, or ARA.
Okay.
And, I won't ask all the obvious questions, but anyway, there's only about 29 members in the Alberta Roofing Association in Alberta. And some of them are owned by, there might be 2 or 3 roofing companies that are owned by the same guy. So,
Yeah,
as far as owners, there's even less than 29. So, in order to bid on a government project, you're limiting. So, for example, in Grande Prairie, there's only one member of ARA in Grande Prairie that's able to bid on a major roofing project with the college. And so, any other person from around the province has the travel costs and all that. And so, and there's good good roofing companies in Alberta that have been trying to get on to the ARA. But the only way to become a member of the ARA is to have an existing member invite you in and sponsor you. Well, of course, none of them want to invite them, so they've been asking and asking and asking.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so,
So you've been bringing this forward to
yeah,
the
I
department?
talked to
and-
your last deputy, your last ADM, and of course they've moved on, and now I
Yeah,
was given
okay.
to a new lady, and I've been working with her, and it's been a year and a half, and no
Okay.
results. So I
Yeah.
hate to bring it up
Yeah.
at this table, but I
Yeah.
wasn't getting anywhere through.
Okay, thank you very much. I think there's legitimate reasons why you might want to make a requirement like that if there's some quality standards that the members have to, you know, that would give us a sense that that the work was of a certain standard, that we could be sure of that might be a reason to do that. But if the membership rules are such that it's kind of a cartel,
Yeah.
where people or organized or companies can exclude people from bidding on government contracts by excluding them from membership and thereby reduce the competition, then I see that very much as a problem, and I would agree with you. And thank you for bringing it up, and leave it with me. And hopefully before next year's estimates, we'll have
Hopefully it's not
an answer
another
for
year.
you.
And one of the reasons was because the ARA give a warranty,
Yeah.
but this other company says ICO, the roofing manufacturer, gives the same warranty whether you're a member of ARA or not. So
Okay.
other companies can provide the same warranty without
Right.
being a member of ARA. So
Right.
even if you
Well,
ask for a warranty.
But which is it? They don't want to join and feel that they can
Oh.
offer just as much, or they do want to join and they're being blocked?
Either one, they've been trying to join, they've been talking
Okay.
to members to invite
Okay.
them in, and they say they will,
Yeah.
but then they don't, they make them jump through all these hoops, and so, it would be easy just to remove that line item off the tender that you have to be a member, and I know the previous
Well,
deputy told the ARA they were gonna do that if they didn't change the practice. But
Okay,
anyway,
that may have brought, okay, yeah. I'm informed that the issue of that you having to be sponsored by an existing member is news to us, so maybe you brought it to our attention, but we'll make sure it
Yeah.
comes up.
I hated to do it,
Higher?
but I was getting
Yep.
a little frustrated, so I
Okay,
thought, well, if
fair
I
enough.
brought it up today, it might get dealt with. So
Yep.
Thank you for looking into that. So just moving on, I mean, we talked about this a little bit in transportation, you know, and so I won't spend a lot, I mean, we've already established that the sunshine list doesn't really exist anymore, or we did that in so I assume that's the same.
Another difference that we have, honorable member.
So you have a sunshine list?
We have a
You have an
unfunded capital project list, yes.
Okay, yeah, and so then that leads me,
The-
so it's not a sunshine list, and so that leads me to the unfunded list.
Okay.
You know, and I asked the same question in transportation. So, you know, what happens to these projects? They're on the unfunded list and then they're not. And so
Yep.
are they, you know, some of them, I'm sure you got more announcements coming down the road, stay tuned, but some of them I think have been dropped off altogether.
Yep.
And, you know, could we find out which ones those are?
I think there are some.
But I mean, there's lots of good projects that aren't on the unfunded list, so, you know, what's the difference between one that's on the unfunded list and one
Well,
that's not?
the different departments' priorities shift from time to time. And we heard, you know, with respect to some of the other projects that the honorable member from Wainwright was talking about. So if they're no longer priorities in the department, in other words, that they're, the difference is it a project that they want to build that's a good project, but we just don't have the money at the moment, then it's on the list. If they don't want to build it anymore, then it comes off the list.
But you get projects like the Edmonton Hospital, like I say, is a good project
Yeah.
that wasn't on the unfunded
No.
list, all of a sudden it's funded.
Yeah.
Projects that were on the unfunded list just disappear.
Yeah.
So the unfunded list doesn't really mean anything.
Well,
There's lots of good projects out there that aren't on any list and they could just.
but they're
appear.
not in any way a priority of the, you know, of the department at the moment, so I think that's.
Apologize to interrupt, but the time allotted has concluded. We'll now move on to Mr. Drysdale with the PC caucus. Continue going back and forth.
Yes, please.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I wasn't quite done with our unfunded list there, so I'll just finish that off because I'd be in trouble if I didn't bring up my favorite topic of the Beaver Lodge Hospital, and
Yep.
it's not on the unfunded project list. I guess, as we've seen, that doesn't really mean a lot, so that's okay, but you know, they've done a lot of work in the last few years, and they've done a functional plan, they've done a needs assessment. You know, AHS was out there last fall and did lots of work with public consultations, all been done, and the Department of Health is supportive of it, and they say now it's given the infrastructure for the design work. And so here's one, as your quote last year, you got to do the design and needs assessment and business case, and that's all been done, and Health says it sent the infrastructure for design, and you've had money in your budget for 3 years now to design rural health, and have always told me that Beaver Lodge design is in that rural health budget, but nothing's been done for 3 years. You got it in there again, and we're gonna actually do something this year on that?
I think that we're waiting for direction from Alberta Health with respect to that.
Well, Alberta Health has said they've given it the infrastructure to design, so.
To design. Oh, the design. Where's the design at?
And you've got money in your budget to design it, but you've had it there for 3 years.
Okay. I'm informed that we have not been directed to proceed with that right now by Alberta. Not-
Okay, I'll take that up with the health minister then, but, and nonetheless, minister, that, you know, this project, you can say, well, health has to tell us. I mean, this hospital, they're not wanting any more. They have a hospital there now. They're
Yep.
not wanting any more than they got, like operations won't change.
Yep.
It's actually an infrastructure concern because the building is.
Because of the condition of the building.
Yes, I mean,
But,
there's.
but I think it has to depend on a decision about, you know, in terms of redesigning a newer facility. I think, you know, I think people are very reluctant to invest in a building that might be replaced.
Yeah, no, I get it. So that, but that, you know, and that's been going on for years, and I'll take responsibility for that too. But I just would like to see something, you know, move forward. We've had money in the budget for rural health facilities designed for 3 years, and none of it's been spent, and it's
Yeah.
back in there again this year.
Yep.
I would just hope that maybe this year something will get done there. And,
Okay.
you know, the health department has said it needs to be done, and anyway,
Yeah.
seems to be a little bit of a pass the puck between health and infrastructure, so I'll ask the health minister as well again. So she was in the community last fall, or this January, and did a public announcement that she supported it, and it would be sent to infrastructure for design.
So just, I won't go into the details, but there's been about $2 million completed with respect to that hospital over the last 5 years or so. And we're currently in the process of doing another $1.5 million worth of work on the hospital. So it's not that nothing hasn't.
No, I
Nothing's
never
occurred,
said nothing, but I
Yeah.
mean, that, how much do you keep putting into an old facility where
Yeah.
we got OSB on the outside for 10 years, getting whether OSB is not a very good finish for the outside of a building. It's been there 10 years, so, yeah, I won't, you know, if you ever find time to visit the facility yourself, I think you'll see it's probably one of the highest needs in Alberta.
Yes,
Because I visited most of them at one time, so.
I agree.
Anyway, I have to bring that up or I'd be in trouble, Minister, so. I'll keep asking the health minister as well, so. So I'll move on to a couple more questions, and it was touched on a bit before, but the Building Canada Fund, and you listed it, and what I was looking for is a list of projects that have been sent to the federal government for this program, and I know you listed off a bunch there, but it's hard in the, that I couldn't find in the budget document. You know, they're probably all in here, but which ones are actually sent for Building Canada, if we could get that listed.
Okay.
And I know you sent it in. Do you know when we'll know, or when we'll have approval on some of those projects?
We're talking about,
The Building Canada Fund. You know, you've submitted them, and it's the feds that
Canada Fund,
have,
yeah.
you know, they've done some,
So
and
we continue to work with the feds, and they're looking at business cases and reviewing them, and we have to hear some.
okay. So they're reviewing our business cases. All the business cases have been submitted. So we're hoping that we're going to hear from them soon with respect to that. I know that initially they wanted to get it out the door really fast, but the process of preparing and reviewing business cases has slowed down the process beyond, I think, what the federal government had hoped.
so anyway, you know, good on you for submitting, so I take it that soon, I guess, is.
We're hoping,
hopefully soon
yeah.
We'll hear, so.
Checks in the mail, I guess.
Okay, I get it. I know you don't control that, so. And just wanted to comment on, since you brought it up earlier about changing of the light bulbs, and I agree, it's a maintenance thing. You do it as they, you know, burn out and switch to LED. That's what I've been doing for the last few years in my place. I think I've got most of them now, but, you know, and I know most of my people I know and Albertans have been doing the same thing, so a lot of us have changed to the LED. So, you know, that always brings the question, why are we being punished, and the guys that weren't doing the right thing now are being funded to do it? And I know you're probably going to dodge that question, but I thought I'd ask you.
I think that's a good guess.
You're going to say it's environment, but so the
Well,
good
it is.
operators are being punished, and the guys that did nothing now are getting free bulbs after I bought all mine. But anyway, we'll move on.
Submit your bill.
I won't bother. So
It's a price of leadership, Wayne.
yeah. Okay, I'll just get to a few more here. So I know, and I think it was in supplementary supply, or it doesn't matter, but education transferred $100 million out of capital to put into maintenance and renewal, and that's good, maintenance and renewal. We always need to do more of that. But before, it was said that we never had enough money in capital to build all the schools we committed to, and yet now we're taking $100 million out of there. So I'm assuming that there's extra money there in capital for schools.
I know. So. Deputy Minister to give you an answer to this.
So one thing that we have done is we continue to finish the 200 schools that were announced as part of the budget as well. Education did announce the building of 25 schools each year for the next 3 years. So investment continues to invest. We continue to invest in education infrastructure, as well as looking at maintenance of some of the existing infrastructure that we have.
Okay, so, so the capital plan shows an overall decrease for schools by $472 million over 4 years. Is that what you're referring to? Yes?
Well, no, I mean, I get it, lots of the schools have opened and projects have been really good, so the capital's gonna decrease, but the education minister said he transferred $100 million out of capital into maintenance and renewal, said they didn't need that $100 million in capital, and it's confusing because we said in the past there was never enough money budgeted for all these capital projects, so I'm just confused on that, and hopefully you can clarify.
Okay.
So there's lots of money in capital, then there was 100 million extra, I guess is what you're saying.
Apologize to interrupt, but the time allotted has concluded. To the PC caucus, Mr. Drysdale, continue sharing your time with the minister.
Yes, I'd like to
Go
share
ahead.
it back and forth. Minister, I was actually done with it, but seems one of your own government members brought the sunshine list back up. I just can't.
Thank you so much for that.
I just can't help bring back a little deja vu. I mean, you said the name was stolen. It wasn't really just the name that was stolen. The old sunshine list, you always said munis needed to know 5 and 10 years out when their capital project was going to be built. That was the reason of the sunshine list. And the answer you gave today, Minister, was priorities change. I think that's the same answer I give you quite a few times in the House. So it's pretty deja vu. But anyway, we'll leave it.
I just, just on this one, because I'm certainly going to give the former government a pass on this one, because in opposition, there was a general feeling, mostly from the Wild Rose, but partly from us, that the government was playing politics with the priorities of schools. And we had, as of my recollection, Mr. Anderson, when he was a Wild Rose, after he was a Conservative, but before he was a Conservative again, was certainly arguing that his and other Wild Rose constituencies were being passed over for badly needed schools, and he represented Airdrie. And then I think the government brought in a plan that did actually build some schools in Airdrie. So the assumption that we made was that there was a secret list that the government was not releasing and that they were fiddling with it for political purposes. And I said this at the very first estimates, honourable member, 2 years ago, that when I got there, I looked for the list and there wasn't one. So the question was then, where do you go? It's not just a matter of taking a list and making it public. Where do you go in terms of trying to provide more transparency in terms of the capital projects? And what we came down to was, if it's not an approved project, what status does it have? I mean, it could be somebody's harebrained idea. And you don't put that on a sunshine list, right? So the way I settled on it was, if we've sort of evaluated it, we consider it's a legitimate and a needed project and should be a priority, but we can't afford to pay for it at the moment. That's when it goes on the list. And we've tried to adhere to that. Then the question of, can you rank them? Well, you evaluate a school according to different priorities than a highway, or you evaluate a hospital according to different criteria than a museum. So it didn't make sense to just to give everything a number and say we're going to proceed methodically down the list. So that's how it came about, and I just think, in fairness, I acknowledged that Mr. Anderson may have been mistaken, and some of us as well, in accusing the previous government of having the secret list.
Well, thank you for that, Minister. You've got your job figured out, and I know you have capable staff that evaluate the projects and the priorities, and that's what we use to move forward, and that's the way it's been done, and it looks like you continue to do it, so good for you. Earlier you talked about a sign on a project.
Yes.
And I think it's good to put signs up for the public knows what's coming. And so that leads to the question, are you going to put signs up on the new school project?
I hope so.
Okay.
I very much hope so. It
That's
has
good,
been,
and-
of course, a source of constant amazement to me that we can mobilize, hundreds of workers, dozens of pieces of heavy equipment, that we can half build a major overpass. And, we're halfway built before we can actually get a sign approved. So,
But that's good, and I agree with
Yeah.
that, but I seem to remember us getting criticized about signs in the past.
well,
So
but
I'm glad
you had the
did
Premier's
that.
name on it. And the fact that she had a QC, that was the problem. It's not that, there's nothing wrong with identifying a project and saying, how much it costs, when you're gonna complete it, how many jobs it may be creating. Like, I think that's legitimate for any government to do. But, you shouldn't use it as political advertising. We made sure our signs are not orange. Just saying.
Okay, and Minister, and you answered another government member's question too, that construction on the 26 new schools would begin next year. And, I asked some of these questions just, as an opposition member, so you have some information for the future, but, I'd be surprised if you're building a lot of schools next year. It usually takes 2 years to do the planning and the permitting and the tendering, like you've always said in the past. So if you can get it done in a year and be in the ground in a year, good for you, but I never could get that done, so.
Well, I think the answer was we're hoping that the first one might be in the ground, but not a guarantee, and certainly not all of them.
A little different, that's good, that's a little
Yeah.
different answer, but that's good. And just a question on, do you have any new methods of procurement? I know when I was there, we were working on some stuff and right or wrong, and, some of our procurement in the past hasn't always been, I think, as good as it could be, and we were working on new methods of procurement. So just wondering if you've been
There's
doing
a
any of
couple of things I can say about that. We've received strong advocacy from the Consulting Engineers Association to use quality-based selection, or QBS. It's used in some places. We haven't done it before. It basically involves assessing proposals based on their merit before you look at price, and then negotiating with price. I think the concern is that might drive costs higher, but also the argument is if you do the planning and the engineering well at the front end, you'll save costs, down the road in terms of the construction. So what we've decided to do is a couple of pilots to look at that, we'll see that. There's also other jurisdictions, I think Calgary, for example, that uses this, so we can draw from existing, experience as well. In terms of procurement in general, we are in the process of trying to develop a new proposal for procurement on a government-wide basis, starting with construction. Now, that's not approved yet, but the hope is that we will be able to focus on promoting more innovation. So companies have said to me, well, instead of just prescribing exactly how you're going to do everything, how we have to do everything, why don't you just tell us that your bottom line goal, like what is it you're trying to accomplish, and let us come up with the ideas. So I think that's worth, taking a look at. And maybe the private sector can actually give us some ideas that we haven't thought of. So I don't think that's a bad idea. I also don't think it's a bad idea to try and find ways to focus on local procurement, to give more opportunity to Alberta firms and Alberta workers where that's consistent with trade agreements. you know, I think that's, you know, that's also and of course, greening the procurement as well and reducing our carbon footprint as a whole, I think is also an objective. So I'd like to find ways to improve our procurement and modernize it and just loosen it up a little bit. You know, you have to protect the taxpayer, and you have to protect government funds, and you don't want to be taken for a ride by anybody or to get substandard work, and that's, you know, that's the trick of it. But otherwise, I think we can be a little more open to new ideas.
Good, thanks, Minister. I think it's important to relook at that, and I'm glad to hear you're continuing with it. So next, I'm going to go back to playgrounds for schools. That was always an issue, and I know we were working with education to, when you build a new school, you put a minimum playground with it. There was nothing, and so this new money in the capital plan for playgrounds, you got $5 million a year. Will some of that money go to the new schools?
Pardon?